Good afternoon. That is loud. Today is October 28th, 2024. It is 5 p.m. We're here for the regular trustee meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any changes or additions?
Yes, Board, I do recommend under the Fire Department, I'd like to add on the second item, Beavercreek Soccer Association overtime request.
Okay, anything else? If not, we have a motion to approve as amended.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept the general ledger report in the amount of $367,000. $367,136.89 for the October 16th, 2024 payroll.
Second.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the payment listings report in the amount of $689,817.93 for warrants through 10/24/2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes. And we have minutes before us from the October 15th regular trustee meeting. Are there any changes or additions? If not, do we have a motion to approve as presented?
I make a motion to approve the October 15th, 2024 regular trustee meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Dean?
Abstain.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes. Okay, at this time we have a pre-scheduled speaker. Mr. Rushing, do you want to give the introduction?
Sure, yes, Board. This evening, we have with Greene County Sanitary Engineering, two special guests, the Director, Mark Chandler, and the Assistant Director and Engineer, Randy Gilbert is here as well. So both Mark and Randy, if you want to come and present to us this evening, your presentation.
Mr. Gilbert, I know you're new to the department, so I apologize that we butchered your name.
Yeah.
Should have came easy. Well, thanks, everybody. Board of Trustees, Ryan, thank you for this opportunity to present here today. We have did several presentations across the last couple months with the introduction of our new water system that we've did. This is, we're still doing the Green Forward kickoff, so we're very proud to be able to get out and display to the public and our stakeholders, specifically Beavercreek Township. I got a compliment. I drive up Trebine Road every day, and in Beavercreek Township, just the outlying areas around the city of Beavercreek is just fabulous. I don't know any other place I would want to live, and that's a compliment to the chief too. We work a lot with the fire department, and you guys have a really classy organization, and we appreciate that. Randy is a lot of help for us too. He's been in meetings with us at the water plant, dealing with customers and stuff, and he is really good in helping work with those customers. So thanks to Randy on that. So Green Forward was first introduced to the public in 2020 and has advanced since that time. For many years, producing softened water by Greene County Sanitary was only a vision. So in 2019, the vision became a reality due to a decreasing debt service. We were allowed to, we had the opportunity to recognize and develop and implement a reinvestment initiative, and it was tagged Green Forward.
Looking ahead beyond the present moment, focusing on the future, what's around the bend. Growth is good, but it requires extra measures to keep up. Public health disasters occur when infrastructure is left to age without much needed updates that account for circumstances like climate change and population shifts. Here in Greene County, we're expecting a surge in population. We've had to find a way to keep up with expansion and give room for more growth. Green Forward is our latest initiative. It's our responsibility to update aging infrastructure and add water sources. The first phase will build and connect new water mains and wells, rehabilitate pump stations, replace residential and commercial water meters, and enhance a water treatment plant. The second phase will expand wastewater treatment facilities and upgrade the sewer collection system. What does it all mean to you? In Greene County, we're looking ahead to plan for the future. Each decision we make helps us adapt to expansion and keeps providing you with dependable service. We're working hard today to ensure a safe and healthy future for current Greene County residents, along with generations to follow. We do it all so you can flush and forget, enjoy clean water, and be assured we're preserving our rivers. Coming soon to your tap. Softer, cleaner, better water.
There we go. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, the why and when of the Green Forward Initiative reinvestment. It does include the upgrades to the water and sewer infrastructure, with the water system as phase one and the sewer system as phase two, is what you just heard. Like many utilities, Greene County Sanitary Engineering has aging infrastructure, equipment beyond their useful life, and of course, a hard water, source water, I&I in the sewer system, and a growing demand for public utilities. Green Forward will upgrade and add the new facilities to keep delivering clean water and safe wastewater services for the next generation. When phase one, of course, which is the water infrastructure upgrades, the majority of those projects have been completed or near completion, with the upgrade of the Northwest Regional as the largest project. We have optimized the existing well network. We are in the process of developing new well fields, which is in your township, Hilltop. New water main extensions, tie-ins, rehabilitated booster stations. One of our great features too for the customers' satisfaction is we have replaced residential and commercial water meters, where we introduce and we actually offer a customer water portal, where we're going to keep campaigning that. You're going to see that more and more. We are going to try to encourage the customer to be their own water manager. Their water conservation is going to be in their hands by looking at daily usage and get different tips through this app. They just have to sign up. It's free. We're going to be really publicizing that. Part two of the wastewater expansion treatment will be the treatment facilities and upgrades of the wastewater collection systems. This whole Green Forward initiative is looked at of anywhere up to 5 to 10 years. So we feel that in '25, we will probably come to a close, the majority of the water infrastructure, and then we will start planning the second phase of the sewer upgrades as we go. So tonight, specifically, we are here and proud to announce the startup of our Northwest Regional Water Plant, which is located right here in that little sliver of Beavercreek Township. I used to get confused how that was cut in there, but that is inside the township. So it was anticipated that there's been a few delays, but we did start transitioning to soft water October 8th. And then within a week, we had to put a pause in it, and Randy will talk a little bit more about that on what's going on with the treatment plant. So hopefully here over the next few weeks to a month, we do realize we are running a little late, but we have great hopes to get this thing going here soon. So part of the design of the new water plant was to increase the capacity from 10 to 12 million gallon per day, with a footprint for future increase up to 16 million. Reinforce reliability, which would increase levels of redundancy and operational flexibility, like an insurance policy. And of course, the big feature here that's the attention getter is the adding of the softening technology, which will overall help the water quality. Okay, Randy's up. Randy Gilbert, sir.
Good evening, everyone. If you all remember back to your high school biology class, And they talked about osmosis and cell membranes. And that's how clean water goes across the cell membrane, to dilute the concentrated solution of minerals and enzymes and all the various chemicals that are in the cells. And that creates an osmotic pressure. What we're doing with our water softening process is we're doing that in reverse. We're applying pressure to a water that has minerals and all kinds of good stuff in it, and we force it through a membrane so only the clean water goes through, and we leave the concentrate behind and send that down the sewer, to the sewer plant. Send the clean water out to all of our customers. Now this permeate, the clean water that goes through the membranes, is very aggressive. Actually, it's not something that you want to drink by itself. So we blend that with some water that goes around the membranes so that we get the hardness that we want to send out to our customers. So the water is not completely demineralized. We've heard some complaints about losing minerals in the water. It's not completely demineralized. We're mixing in about 20% bypass. Goes around the membranes. So 80% of the water goes through the membranes and strips out just about everything that's in the water. That gets us down to a hardness of about 8 grains. Now, the membranes will take out viruses, bacterias, takes out some of the minerals. We chose this softening process over some of the other options that were available because of its ability to strip out things that you don't necessarily want to drink. We felt that was an insurance policy for us for those things that we may need to be regulated on in the future that we don't know about yet. There's always new things that are coming up that we have to treat for. We felt this was an insurance for us as a process that will take out almost everything out of the water and allow us to provide for the future a very good quality and safe drinking water product for our customers. Next. Some of the benefits of softened water: improved taste, use a lot less detergents. It's going to save on soap. People washing their hair really appreciate the lack of stringiness, or whatever you want to call it, that your hair tends to be with hard water. Better hot water heating. Your hot water heaters will last longer. All of your fixtures will tend to last a little longer. You're not going to get the staining. You're not going to get the crusty buildup on them that you do. Now, if you've got a home softener, you're not going to really see the difference. But the one advantage is your home softener should use about 80% less salt, at least 2/3 less salt, because it's going to be introducing a softer water that it has to soften on down. If you're taking it, some home softeners take it down to nearly zero in your house. They do that by replacing the minerals with salt. Our process does not add any chemicals or any sodium to the water like water softener does, your home water softener. But you're going to use less salt, and you're going to have less frequent repairs on all of your equipment. Obviously, there's cost savings involved if you're using less soap, detergents, less salt, and obviously if you're not replacing appliances and fixtures, you're going to save your money there as well. Next slide. Transition to softened water, as Mark said, we started on October 7th. We were very happy that we finally got to turn the system on. Unfortunately, on the following Sunday, we had to make the decision to shut it down. We were having some issues with breakthrough of iron and from our old filters. So we are exploring why that is happening. It was not happening at the start of the project. So we're investigating those issues. Once we get those resolved, we will resume softening. But at the current time, we can't risk damaging the millions of dollars of membranes that are in these skids. Well, there's our October 8th to 13th. We got 5 days. We were actually getting reports back in, people were noticing already, which we were surprised because the first step in the softening process, we had to do it in 3 steps per the EPA. They did not want us to go from essentially 0 to 100 mile an hour in 1 step. And we were surprised at the small reduction that we made initially, people actually were noticing. So, and they were very happy about it. But so as far as customer notifications, we're keeping track of social media, Facebook, Instagram. We've been sending out letters to all of the various communities, billing inserts, and we're doing community presentations, which this is one of. And with that, we have a whole list of frequently asked questions, but a few of them here. Water treatment upgrade. Again, 27 grains down to 8. Reverse osmosis. It's a great process. And when are we going to receive softened water again? Restart our process? We don't know for sure. It's probably at least a week, probably at least 2 weeks out. Till we've got some test reports we're expecting back later this week, so we can start to make some decisions. And with that, I think we're ready for any questions.
What was the total cost of the project, roughly?
The water treatment plant or the whole thing altogether?
The whole, to soften the water, the whole package?
The whole package is, haven't really totaled it up, but it's somewhere lately, but it's somewhere in the $85 million range.
I thought. How many customers do you have connected to Greene County Water? And that was the first question, roughly.
I want to say about 18,000 water customers.
That's what I thought. And we
have a
does
total
Greene
of
County
about
sell?
27,000 customers total with sewer, but not all of our sewer customers get our water.
And the sewer wouldn't have a benefit of soft water. It'd be the water customers, right?
Correct.
Does Greene County, I know like Montgomery County used to service off Swigert, and so other counties would service or provided water to parts of Greene County. Does Greene County provide water to people outside of Greene County anymore? I can't remember if there was. I thought Montgomery
No.
County was servicing parts
I
of
wanted to be
Greene.
careful about that, just to make sure, but no, we do not supply. We will. There's a small strip of houses on Wilmington Pike. Currently, Montgomery County serves the Clio area over there,
Right.
that whole development. There are the houses on the west side of Wilmington Pike, from Brown Road down to Clio, are actually fed off of a Greene County water main. So once we take that system over, we'll be selling water to them from our system. Right now, we're reselling their water back to them, I guess is the way to
Sure.
look at it.
Okay.
Do you have any measure of, on the 18,000 customers, how many of those have water softeners now? Any idea? I don't even know how you'd measure that. I don't know if you have
that'd
it.
be-
We're assuming it's somewhere in the
Half.
80%
Or 80.
maybe. There's a lot of them out there.
So that question, and I'm asking these questions because somebody asked me to ask these questions to get to a final question, which was at roughly $4,700 per customer. How does this all pay it back for the customer? Soap, they don't spend that much in soap.
Well, we have the water, not all the improvements were necessary for
Softening,
softening.
right?
A lot of the
Capacity.
water line improvements that were necessary, the pump station improvements that were necessary, those were done with the goal of taking back our customers, our Greene County residents as customers from Montgomery County and the city of Dayton. So we save huge dollar amounts just on that. There's a huge return on that. in excess of $500,000 a year.
And Xenia water is different than Greene County water?
Yes, we do not serve City of Xenia customers.
Who services Central State and Wilberforce? The county or Xenia?
Xenia serves Central State. We have customers around them.
Okay.
So Wilberforce is part of our system,
Sure.
as well as Cedarville and Shawnee Lake area.
Okay. That was all my questions. Thank you.
Yes. Anybody else?
Yes, I had some questions, and maybe Mark might be able to answer more on the substations that you've created. The one on Barronwood, it's taken forever, it's like 2 years, I think, at least. And they finally have a fence around it, but it's not, the fence is not attached yet for the gating. And they're saying now that the residents are on me about it, and I'm like, aren't in charge of that. But now that you were here, and so the shrubbery they put in is dead and has been dead when they put it in. And
Yes.
I'm assuming that it'll be replanted in the spring because it's no sense doing anything now.
Well, actually, now is the best time to replant.
So they're not doing anything. So it sits for a long time, and then somebody comes and does something, and then it sits for a long time, and somebody comes and does. So it's like, is there an estimated time when it's gonna be finished and the gate will be shut and locked?
I wish I could tell you an exact date.
The best was the Christmas wreath on the porta pot.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something. Then somebody got upset with that.
We have had extensive delays on our projects.
Yes.
The Wellfield project is not finished. Those projects were not finished on time because of just material delays. VFDs, pumps, could not be delivered, would not be delivered on the normal schedules. When we executed contracts, even at that point, contractors didn't know how long it was going to be to get the stuff that they were going to need. You know, they turned in their purchase orders and they got we'll send that to you in a year. Which was far beyond what anybody anticipated for schedules. It's been a problem throughout the industry, but for some reason, VFDs, variable frequency drives, and electrical components in general have just been extremely hard to get and have the manufacturers commit and hold to a schedule.
When the project is actually completed, will your department or Greene County at least come back and like fix the street? Because there has been heavy equipment sitting there and for long periods of time. And so part of the street there is City of Beavercreek and the other part of the street is the HOA. So I want to make sure that some of that street
I was not aware that there had been any damage. I'll have to review that.
when you have that kind of heavy equipment sitting there for long periods of time, yes, there is damage.
I was not aware it had
They
been
asked
there.
me to bring that up.
I unfortunately have not been able to
I'm
get out to
sure,
the
you
job
know.
sites very often. I have inspectors that do that on a regular basis, and they have not mentioned it, but I will check in on it.
I would like to have you put that in the notes at least, because those directors have come to me and said, hey, and I said, I'll make sure I ask the question.
We will check it out.
Appreciate that. That's all the questions I have.
Any questions?
Anything else?
I had none.
Just a final thing, so thank you for personally getting involved in working with the Kubander family and Mitch Kostler as far as an amiable solution and workaround on the Hilltop Road raw water line
Yes, that is
project.
the one piece that is still coming, is the Hilltop well field. So there will be, we have not received the official word, but Thursday, we were supposed to have gotten our loan approved for that project. So we, as soon as we can get the official word that, yes, it did occur, we'll be entering into contracts to start those projects as well. So we've got that raw water on Hilltop and then the well field itself.
The third party that was communicating initially was lacking in their communication skills, but once you got involved, that improved drastically. So Carrie and Donna
Yes,
both
I've
appreciated
I've
that.
been
Yep,
very disappointed in that contract or consultant, so,
no, it was appreciated. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We have no old business. Oh, any citizens desiring to speak, I'm sorry. Be remiss. Mr. Parks, as a citizen of somewhere else. Okay. No old business, new business. We have a proclamation for Veterans Day.
Yes, Board, I recommend reading that in the record as tradition. We want to recognize all those affiliated with Beavercreek Township, especially those that have worked for us or those that have family members that are veterans coming up. This is the last meeting before Veterans Day on November the 11th.
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2024-1028-admin-E, a resolution honoring veterans employed by Beavercreek Township. Whereas on November 11th, 2024, Beavercreek Township will observe Veterans Day, pausing to honor every veteran who has ever worn one of our nation's service uniforms. And whereas we pay tribute to our veterans, we are mindful that no ceremony can repay the debt we owe every day for their service to our country. And whereas each time our freedoms have come under assault, our veterans have responded with resolve, courage, and willingness to sacrifice. And whereas under the most demanding of circumstances and in the most dangerous corners of the earth, Americans' veterans have served our country with distinction and valor, and all veterans deserve our gratitude and praise for their selfless acts and for the duty served to our great country. And whereas on this day, Beavercreek Township wishes to honor employees of the township who are veterans and/or are currently active duty and military reserve units, namely Luke Kraft, Air National Guard active reservist; Anthony Faulkner, Army; Sean Fowler, U.S. Coast Guard; Steve Hamilton, U.S. Air Force; Sean Kessel, Army National Guard; Eric McCombs, Army National Guard active reservist; Travis McCool, Air Force; Mike Mitchner, Army; Joe Mulkin, Air Force; Rob,
I agree.
thank you, Navy; John,
Ostowski.
thank you, Air National Guard active reservist; Doug Ransdale, Army; Trustee Deborah Wallace, Army; Greg Williams, Army National Guard; and Joshua Weingard, Marines. Whereas on this day, Beavercreek Township also wishes to honor employees of the township whose sons, daughters, and spouses have served or are serving in one of our America's military branches, namely Justin Hart, wife Ariel Hart, Army National Guard; Trustee Tom Kretz, son Eric Kretz is on active duty in the Air Force; Travis McCool, wife Jessica McCool is active duty in the Air Force; Joe Milkin's son Tyler, Nathan, and Dylan are active duty in the Air Force; Jill Sink, husband Sean Sink, veteran of the Army. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, Ohio, extend their heartfelt gratitude and best wishes for success in their future endeavors to these employees' spouses and their sons and daughters who have served and are serving as well. And be it further resolved that we urge all citizens to pay due respect and gratitude to all veterans for their sacrifice and service in our country.
Second.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Board. We now move on to some of the department reports. Unfortunately, our Community Development Director, Mr. Earhart, is out ill today. But before you, we do have two resolutions, as we discussed previously, in regards to adult use marijuana. This is an either-or proposition. So the order in which the resolutions are presented is Resolution A is to prohibit adult use cannabis processor and dispensaries, but to allow one adult use cultivator within the unincorporated area of Beavercreek Township. If this were to be adopted in the affirmative, again, this would prohibit all adult use dispensaries within Beavercreek Township. But it would allow one cultivator within Beavercreek Township, which is what we have adopted for the medical medicinal use of marijuana. If this resolution would be voted against to fail, then we move on to option B, which would be to allow one adult use cannabis processor or dispensary or cultivator, and I guess all three of them, one of each, in the unincorporated area of the township. I know Mr. Earhart had a meeting with our legal advisor, Ms. Frick, who's on here by Teams, if you have any questions, particularly about the law as it reads. But again, the option one would be to prohibit adult use processors, dispensaries, but allow one adult use cultivator within the unincorporated area of the township. And that is what's before you first this evening.
Great, and to clarify, so, we'll call it CDR-A.
Correct.
If I understand correct. What you said, and I believe what you intended was, so it would prevent, having a dispensary, in the unincorporated portion of Beavercreek Township. We don't control what happens in the broader
Absolutely.
Beaver-
As you know,
all of
there is-
Beavercreek Township.
Right,
The
there is
city can
one
do
in the
what they want,
incorporated.
right.
This is
Okay.
specifically unincorporated.
Right, okay. And the reason, Mrs. Dean, for the two resolutions essentially, and for those that may be listening in, was just a cordial difference of opinion between myself and Ms. Wallace. We had a slight disagreement. I think we both agreed to maintain the ability to have a cultivation facility. We already have one permitted now.
Permitted.
There's no reason to increase that number from more than one when we don't have anyone asking to put one here and we already permit one. The difference was in dispensary, and so my rationale for, and I can't speak to Ms. Wallace's, she can speak on her own, but my rationale was purely based on that we had an election on this. It was a statewide issue not long ago, very recently. And when I essentially tallied the vote results of the unincorporated precincts, it was, I can't remember, I don't have the numbers in front of me, roughly 57% of the vote was to, against allowing the sale and cultivation of recreational cannabis products in the state. And so, based on that rationale, then my logic was to follow that and say that that's what the bulk of the residents in those 90 to 94 precincts voted, and that was my rationale for saying I would not be in favor of having dispensaries, but I would maintain the cultivation side. And to clarify, if we did nothing, what would happen if we don't pass either of these resolutions?
So we do have a moratorium through the end of January, so until such time, if the moratorium were to elapse, then a licensee could come in and request to be placed at any of the zoning districts, and we would essentially be in limbo at that time.
Even though we've already said no to medical dispensaries, the fact that
That's correct.
recreational dispensaries are now permitted by state, then we would not have the fallback of saying that because we already prohibited medical, we couldn't carry that forward. Because only a medical can become a recreational. A medical can become recreational, or you could just go straight recreational.
Yeah, all medical licenses automatically convert to adult use. If we did not do anything, then we open ourselves to potential litigation of not having an affirmative either way. We need that affirmative. Now, that would be up to Ms. Frick to argue on her behalf if we did nothing. However, it would open itself to that exposure that would be litigated in court.
I just wanted it on the record what would happen if we did nothing. So, because it's important we do something.
Right.
So, okay.
And again, my rationale, as Mrs. Dean and I discussed at a prior meeting, was that even though you looked at the vote, I think that was a vote in 2016, if I'm
No,
not
that
mistaken.
was 2023.
I don't think it was 2023.
With November of '23,
November of 2023.
issue 2.
And we did not know at the time, nor the citizens did not know at the time, that if we did have the adult use, we would receive 3.36% of the taxation of that, which could be as much as $200,000, which would then be revenue production for the township, which could extend our taxpayer dollars for our citizens. And I don't think, if the citizens knew that that would be a revenue production and assist on taxpayer dollars, I think that would be a different viewpoint. So I would recommend that we vote yes for one dispensary and/or processor and/or cultivator for the township. And our planning department has shown us where the very limited places that could be put in the township. So it would not be anything near a school or a church, and only an industrial area. So that would be my viewpoint, and I think we've discussed about revenue production on the record prior to several meetings ago about that.
My recollection is different on the revenue production, is that there was a percent of sales, 10% of the total sales essentially would go into a bucket that would then be distributed by the state to those districts, essentially that allowed dispensaries. And that there was no guarantee of any 1% or 10% of that money coming back to Beavercreek Township. As far as, there was no mathematical equation.
Right, the current statute reads that, you're right, you're both right. 10% of the total sales goes into a state provided fund. Of that 10%, a fraction of that, which is 3.6%, then goes to a state host community fund. How that state host committee fund is allocated is yet to be determined. And unfortunately, I attended a Ohio Township Association meeting 2 Fridays ago, and what came out of that meeting was that there are currently plus or minus about a half dozen pending bills in the state legislature, and of those, again, plus or minus 6, only one keeps that measure in law. The other, call it 5, removes that from law, and the state keeps those dollars.
Yeah, that was my understanding. Okay, what are your thoughts, Mrs. Dean?
I would probably be more in favor of, the voters and what they voted on, since the, the maybe that we will get taxpayer dollars off of that is a far maybe, and that we would ever see those dollars is not, worth the allowance for that, when the voters voted against it.
Mr. Rushing or Ms. Frick, so if, regardless of which resolution we passed this evening, if something changed a year from now, we could completely reverse this, we could modify this with a new resolution.
Absolutely. We're creatures of the state, so if the state changes the law and we're expressly given the authority to do such, we can.
But if we do nothing and we get an application, or if we pass, call it Plan B, and permit recreational dispensaries, and we get an application, and then obviously we can't at that point then go back and make a new resolution once that application's been filed.
Absolutely, that would
And
hinder their due process.
So in the spirit of taking the conservative approach forward, then I would recommend that we move forward with resolution, I guess I'll call it A.
And to clarify, Board,
But we would need a motion,
CDRA would prohibit adult use processors and dispensaries and
Are
allow for
processors
one.
not part of the cultivation process, though? I mean, that's what I thought we did with,
That's correct. In the agriculture, the board adopted cultivation and processing.
right.
But as written, this would prohibit adult use cannabis processors and dispensaries
So it goes back on what we already agreed to.
for adult use, correct.
Yeah.
However, if we would want to opt to allow one adult use cannabis processor and one adult use cannabis cultivator, we can amend the CDRA to allow
That's what
that.
we had agreed on, I thought. That portion of it. Ms. Wallace, I'm asking you. As far as we were in agreement that we would maintain the cultivation and
That's what I-
processing, because we already had that.
That's what I thought.
But we would,
But now
then
you're-
there was a difference of opinion as far as dispensary. That was the only piece that was in.
But this one, A,
A is different
Eliminates
than what we have. It does not eliminate cultivation. It eliminates the processing, but we already have cultivation and processing permitted for
Correct.
medical.
And this, Ms. Frick, I don't know, this was drafted with you and Mr. Earhart. Was there a different take on the direction that we received?
No, I think it might have been a point of confusion because as we went back and were looking at things, we were having some difficulty finding the original resolution. Although ultimately, what is in the zoning resolution is cultivation and processing. So I think probably just it's a typographical error by not including cultivating and processing together, because that's how it is currently in our zoning resolution for the medical. Although, in speaking with the state, my understanding is they're not issuing any more of those licenses anyway. And even as adult use, there's going to be a limited number of licenses, at least at this point. I mean, they may, obviously, the legislature can increase those, but yeah, I think if you want to just change this in A to include cultivation and processing, that's how it is currently in the zoning resolution.
Okay, so it would be classified as allow one adult use cultivating and processing facility within the unincorporated area of Beavercreek Township? Or would it be a cultivator and processor?
Agricultural district.
Okay, that's not what this says. Okay, so if we were to reword this, it would be a resolution, in the event we chose to go this path, it would be a resolution to prohibit adult use cannabis dispensaries and to allow one adult use cultivation and processing facility within the agricultural district of the unincorporated area of Beavercreek Township.
Yes.
With an agricultural district or agricultural zoned area?
Be the
Under the
land use
A1
district.
agricultural.
Okay.
Yeah.
Under the A1.
Yeah.
And Board, what we can do, since we have the moratorium through January with this specific direction, I will ensure we can redraft the resolution and put it on the agenda as a one resolution for the next
I think
meeting.
it's better.
That way it reads clear to define that we, yes, and in the affirmative, we will allow one adult use cannabis processor and cultivator in an A1 district of the unincorporated area of the township. And we will prohibit any adult use cannabis dispensaries in the entire unincorporated area of the township.
Why don't we just hold this for now, go through the rest of the agenda, have Dawn change that and email it to us and print it and get it done today?
I believe she's mobile right now and
Okay.
is unable to do
Yeah,
that.
I'm actually in a vehicle right now,
Okay.
unfortunately.
If that's something either one of you can modify, just to get it done. we're all three here. And one of the reasons we're talking about today is because we weren't all three here the last two times we talked about it. So,
I can do that. It will disrupt the screen.
that's fine. Okay. Is there, from a community development at risk, are there any other topics of discussion?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. And IT, I see Mr. Paragon is here.
Here in case there was a question.
Okay. Is everything working, Mrs. Wallace?
I don't have
Ms.
any
Wallace?
questions, but I just wanted to say that this new laptop is fantastic.
All right. Nothing else from IT, anything from finance? Nothing there, nothing, wait a minute, public service, we have something somewhat important. We could table this and come back to it.
Okay. Thought I'd give you the chance. Good evening, board. We have a couple things for your consideration. The first one being the important item is the proclamation for Mr. Parks's retirement after 34 years of service. So we have that in the agenda there for you to, I believe you probably want that, do you want that read into the record, Mr. Rushing?
Yes, I think it'd be very
Yes.
appropriate.
So leave it to you guys.
Okay. A proclamation, resolution number 202-41028 PSD-A, recognizing Tim Parks on the occasion of his retirement from Beavercreek Township. Tim Parks was hired in November 1990 as Mechanic 1 by John Deal, Richard Little, and Mitch Kostler, beginning his dedicated service when the township road mileage was 19.58, and Tim was promoted to maintenance coordinator in 2003 under leadership of Carol Graff, John Deal, and Richard Little, demonstrating his commitment to the community. And in May 2027, Tim was promoted to road superintendent again under the guidance of Carol Graff, Bob Glazier, and Richard Little, as the road mileage increased to 34.13. And whereas Tim retired and was rehired in January 2017, continuing to serve the community as a director of public service. And during his career, Tim has worked with 11 trustees, 5 fiscal officers, 2 administrators, 4 fire chiefs, building strong relationships that have enhanced the township. And whereas Tim has led several major projects and enhancements, including participating in the building of the Public Service Building in 2001 to 2002, the widening of Factory Road to 3 lanes from US 35 to Yellow Brick Road, library restorations, Factory Road stormwater improvements, and managing responses to significant events such as the windstorm of 2017, the tornado of 2019, several winter storms, and internal service billing. And whereas Tim will retire as Director of Public Service on December 18th, 2024, with road mileage over double from his hire date, or approximately 50 miles, and has grown his staff from 6 to 11 members. And Tim will begin terminal leave on November 1st, 2024, with his last date of employment with Beavercreek Township being December 18th, 2024. Now be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, Ohio, extends to Tim Parks their sincere and heartfelt gratitude for his exemplary service and dedication to the citizens of Beavercreek Township, and congratulate him on his retirement. Thank you so much.
We have a second.
Second.
I don't think I'm gonna call roll. I think you should stay. Ms. Wallace,
Yes.
Mrs. Dean,
Yes.
Mr. Kratz.
Yes. I think it should also be noted that I think you out-survived at least 10 trustees and 2 county engineers.
say? I'm good. Okay. I just thought I'd make sure I give you the opportunity before I move on. Thank you, board.
Thank you.
The next item for your consideration is the electricity aggregate that we've done in the past. I believe on Teams, Mr. Primera from Integrity is on. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, he is.
Yes. So he can also answer any questions that you might have, but what this essentially does is we're still under a contract until June 1st of 26. But with the way prices have fluctuated with electricity, we are trying to lock in from June 1st of 26 to a term of 40 months, which I believe takes you to October 1st of 2029. The rates that we have currently that were quoted today, which is what's in front of you, is 0.8890, which equivalates to, when you do the billing, 8.890 per kilowatt hour. Again, we've gone through this, and the prices are fluctuating drastically, and I believe Mr. Rush and I were discussing earlier today, they're talking of a 10% increase in electricity bill costs going forward. So we're just trying to lock in the best prices that we can now and try to avoid some of that volatility. Again, Mr. Primera is on the line if you have some questions for him or I.
And for clarification, this is an opt-in or an opt-out program?
This is opt-in. This would be, we would sign the contract, and then we would be,
And then residents would have the option to opt-in?
this is mainly for the township
This is
buildings.
just the
This is
township.
just for the
Okay.
township buildings. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
because the county is still offering their program
That's correct.
for the unincorporated
They do.
portion? Because wasn't their program at 4.9?
I can't recall, but they do have a program for the unincorporated area. That's
Okay, so
correct.
this is essentially for the township as a commercial,
Township-owned
as a commercial
facilities.
As the,
user?
just the township
Yeah,
facilities, buildings,
Okay.
firehouses, and so on and so forth.
okay, all right. So this would be taking action for the township to opt in for its own consumption.
Correct.
Okay, just to clarify, thank you. And so as far as, on the term of the agreement, what is the termination clause if we were to terminate early?
I'd have to go back and
I
look.
don't know if your representative can answer that.
Frank, do you have that? Do you know that off the top of your head? Maybe not?
Which one is?
Frank, we can't hear you.
We were having some issues earlier with, his getting into the team.
Can you hear me now?
There you
Yes,
are.
Perfect. That was my doing.
Sorry about that.
so
Okay,
the
so
question was, what's the termination clause look like if we were to terminate early?
Okay, so how the termination fee works with NRG, which is direct energy, is if the rate is below where the market rate is at that point, they resell the power onto the grid and they don't take a loss, so there is no termination fee. On the other end of things, everybody can see how high electric prices are right now and where they're going. So they would take the difference in the rates. If that rate were to drop below the rate that's on this contract, they would take the difference in that price and the amount of months that are left on the contract, and that is how they would calculate that. But the rate that we're proposing to start in June of 2026, we're going to be well below where that market's at that point. The current contract that you guys have right now, you guys are paying a 0.0499 on that. The reasoning that we got that price was because that contract was signed in July of 2021 to start in June of 2023. So we've been handling this account since 2014, and every time that we lock in the renewals, we like to get them done right around now, 2 years in advance, so that way you guys end up on, the better end of the spectrum as far as where you're at now versus where the utility rate is. So AES right now is, I believe, at about 10.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's why you guys are paying half of what that price is right now, because we were able to lock that in 2 years in advance. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, but I
I-
don't see it in the contract.
I understand it, but,
So the
is
termination
Ms.
fee,
Frick still on here?
Yes.
Dawn, Ms. Frick, have you reviewed this contract as far as the indemnification clause in section 17? It says that the township will be responsible for and shall indemnify NRG against all losses, costs, expenses, including court costs and reasonable fees arising out of claims for personal injury, including death or property damage from the commodity or other charges, collectively losses which attach after title passes to buyer.
Well, most of those contracts typically have that in that. We had them change it to the extent authorized by law
yes.
at the beginning of that because
Okay,
of the way the law
So-
works and you can't appropriate for it. Yeah, at the beginning of A, to the extent authorized by law, buyer will be responsible for and shall indemnify.
Oh, okay.
So technically, it could be insured up to the amount of insurance, or it could be indemnified up to the amount of insurance if your insurer, Oterma, was willing to do that. But again, since by law the township itself, because it couldn't appropriate for it, that's why we added that clause to the extent authorized by law.
okay. And so again, gentleman representing NRG, so if the rate were to drop, if the market rate were to drop below this guaranteed rate, that's when the penalty clause would kick in, if we terminated?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. And if the market rates increase, obviously, there would be no reason for us to terminate. If we are not happy with the service we're getting from NRG or from your group, what's the remedy for that?
So what we do, as we've done in the past, is we would take a look at the account and we would talk to NRG, and they actually offer what's called like a blend and extend program, where if that were to happen and rates came down, we could renegotiate the price with the supplier. So that way it would reflect a lower rate on the bill.
Okay. Would they be willing to add a clause that says we would not pay more than the then market rate? And then then we'd have no reason to terminate.
So I could find out. That would be something that I would have to go back to the legal department and I would have to talk to them about.
Okay.
But as far as the contract terms, that's why they amended 17. So that way I think they did it as best that they could with the wording on these contracts.
Yeah. No, I understand that, and that's fine if Ms. Frick's okay with it, and it says the extent authorized by law, which the law may change between now and then, we don't know, but if we could essentially soften that termination to at least say that, if the rates drop, they drop. If they go up, we won't pay more.
I could, that's something that yeah, that's definitely something I could run by them tomorrow.
Okay, and then, thank you, and then, John, as far as, is this the only aggregator that we went out to?
Yes, because we've been with, from what he said, we've been with them since 2013, I think it was.
Okay.
So this is something that was brought to us
My
to
only
renew.
question, over a 10-year period, it might be prudent just to get a couple other quotes. I don't know where they're at. They may be the highest, they may be the lowest, we can't tell anybody that with certainty.
Okay,
So one thing that we do is we shop it. We're a consultant. So
Sure.
we've shopped this with 30 different providers, and that's why we went with Direct Energy on this one, because they were a lot lower than where Freepoint was, who you're currently with right now.
Sure, and I understand the process. I've used them for my own companies over the years. I have gotten different rates from different consultants, and part of that is based on their commission rate back.
Correct.
And so, if there's a difference in commission, then there's a difference in blended rate forward. So, it is really just a cross-check so that we're all three elected by people that will ask, did you actually get 3 quotes or not?
right, yeah.
So-
One question that I wanted to ask Frank. Frank, will this have any, if by taking that portion to legal, will this change anything in the pricing between today and
Um,
tomorrow?
I don't believe so. I mean, the pricing changes, it's a commodity. So every day, we have to refresh pricing with the market. So I can't tell you if the price is going to change because I don't know until tomorrow when I get in here and we refresh.
Okay,
When was this price generated?
that was generated
This-
today.
Today.
Yes.
Yeah, he and I spoke around, 10:30.
Okay.
So I guess that would be my only question is the chance of it changing between today and tomorrow. Again,
I'm happy to add to the motion the language I proposed, but I don't know if they'll accept it.
I don't know either. That's,
What
That'd be up
language
to the
would you
provider.
propose?
Essentially, that if the rate were to drop, that you would honor the market rate, or whoever the provider was would honor the market rate
Okay.
during the term of the agreement. Happy to add that, and we could just pass it right now.
I would love to add that for you right now, but I think my legal department would have a problem.
Okay, what was yesterday's rate?
Yesterday, this rate was, it's been good over the past, I think, 4 days. We were at the 889, but prior to this, when we first started talking about the renewal, the first time that we spoke, I think we were at a rate of around a 789 or a 799. And the market has continued to move, I think, over the past couple of months when we've been talking back and forth.
I don't know what you guys want to do.
right, again, I'm not trying,
That's a logical question.
right, my fear would be,
It is a commodity, right?
Right,
We go to
so-
war tomorrow and it changes.
right, I understand.
I
I
think we
just,
should just pass it tonight as is and see if,
The resolution does have a not to exceed amount of 9 cents, knowing that it's a commodity. So when we produced the packet on Thursday, it was a not to exceed amount. And we refreshed it this morning and it's 9.98 cents, if that's accurate. I don't know if I'm reading that correctly, but it's within the not to exceed amount. So if you pass the resolution with as it reads, we can't assign anything if it exceeds the 9 cent rate. So that is somewhat of a guardrail.
Yeah, it's a budgeting, it helps budgeting. you know.
Exactly. It's a guardrail so that if you come back and
usage stays the
yeah, with the election and everything, I think we should pass it as tonight.
but when we refresh tomorrow, if it exceeds that amount, we'll have to come back regardless because the resolution as written today
Has a
reads not
limit
to
on it,
exceed
right?
9 cents.
Okay, what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm fine either way. I wish it had that guardrail in there for the next time, but
I mean, I think we should probably pass something today, just in, a couple weeks when we get back, and maybe.
I won't vote no. I'm just threw it out there. So still happy to amend the resolution though, if you agree.
And we'll certainly negotiate that with them, and if we're able to amend it, we can.
Sure.
But again, if it's not to exceed 9 cents, so if it does change, then we'll have to
Either
come
way it
back and
comes back,
refresh.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
so are we
Miranda, stay
passing
home
this?
one
You can pass it as presented
As
by reading the
presented.
title.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 20241028-PSD-B, a resolution authorizing the township administrator to enter into an agreement with a competitive retail electric service provider. as
Second.
pres-
Mrs. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wallace,
Yes.
Mr. Kratz.
Yes.
thank
I'm a
you.
risk taker, not a gambler.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much. If you guys need anything else, please feel free to give me a call, okay?
Thank you.
We will do just that.
All right, have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
For future reference, that I have shopped at the same time.
That's a fair
3
question.
different consultants, and what it is occasionally is the difference, the rate, the base rate is the same. The difference is the commission that the consultant takes. So,
That's fine, again, this just came.
just for future reference.
Right,
yeah.
this just came to us as a renewal, so
Yep,
I'll take that into consideration.
just for future. And I don't think you necessarily need to do it every time, but every 10 years isn't unreasonable. Okay. I will not ask you that again in 10 years, just so you know.
Thank you, Board. And I move on to the fire department. We amended it, but the first item is the scheduled item, and that is the Lexipol Policy Management Enterprise Solution. So I'll turn it over to Chief Vandenboss, our HR manager, Jill Sink. They're going to tag team this. It's primarily regarding the fire department. However, it does impact the entire township, and that is their recommendation as well.
Yes, good evening, Board. Thank you for your time with this. One of the challenges that we've had as an organization, both township-wide and the fire department in particular, has been policy management. It's been a long-standing issue, managing implementation of policies, keeping them up to date, keeping the current ones available, keeping crews educated, informed, making sure they're compliant with local, state, national regulations. All of that has, it's been just an ongoing challenge. We've used some of our resources in the past, for example, SharePoint, to try and manage it, which is a workable solution, but it requires a lot of maintenance, and it's not well suited for that. And so the fire department, as part of our continuing improvement process, has been evaluating matter of fact, one of our strategic goals was working on not only communicating with our internal stakeholders about policies, but also being able to maintain and train on those things. And then that aligned with Mrs. Sink's management and with the HRIS development. And so we've been kind of partnered over the past, 9 months or so, evaluating different platforms. And the ideal solution would have been to incorporate it straight into the HRIS solution that the township ultimately goes to. Unfortunately, none of those solutions does it any better really than our SharePoint solution does. So the fire department had been made aware of Lexipol. It's kind of a fire service industry standard for policy management. And in fact, it does some things for fire departments even above and beyond what it can do for townships. And so when we began looking at it, we looked at it just from a fire department perspective. We kind of looked at, could we use the fire department solution township-wide? And that wasn't really a good fit either, but they do have a local government solution as well as their fire solution, and that's what we're ultimately bringing to you as a proposal. So this is 2 parts of a Lexipol solution. The first part is fire department specific, and then the second part is local government specific, which would also obviously include the fire department. The advantage, I was about to say the advantage, there are several advantages, and without getting into a Monty Python skit about how many there are, the very first thing is they build in version control. So the policies that they have allow us to maintain what's the most current version, when was it approved, when did the board review it, when was it most recently reviewed, for example, for a triennial audit, just to make sure that they're maintained and that sort of thing. Second, once they're implemented, and matter of fact, Mr. Russian has it on the screen, we can show you directly. When a member would log in, the first thing they're gonna see is this landing page, this dashboard. On the left-hand side is user acknowledgement. So when a new policy goes into effect, after it's been approved by either the board or Mr. Russian, depending on the level of the policy, it would get posted here. When they log in, they would see that there's a new policy. They're presented the entire policy, and then at the bottom, they have to scroll down and acknowledge receipt of it. So it takes that first piece of, were they aware of it, out of being a question, and it gives us a reportable, definitive answer. The second thing that is offered on that same homepage is to the right is daily training bulletins. Those daily training bulletins are basically a short summary with a scenario-based example of what the policy is meant to accomplish, with 1 or more questions to validate that the member has read and understands at least generally what the content is. And again, that captures that answer, and then it becomes a reportable part. So if there's ever any doubt as to whether an employee was made aware or has been trained on the policy, this takes care of both of those steps and provides documentation for us. So if you go down from the bottom of this tab, hit next, it's got the questions there. If you answer incorrectly, it'll give you you guessed right on the first one.
Yes.
100%.
One way around it.
Yeah, exactly.
speaking from experience, you can't guess your way through all of them, or at least I have not been able to.
Here's
But
one.
it will flag if you get an incorrect
Here we go,
answer
there.
and force you to go back. It's not an in-depth training by any stretch, but it is enough to validate that somebody at least read it and have a basic understanding. So it does provide us that immediate feedback and the ability to, again, report on that. In addition to that, if you go up to the top in the menu bar, there's a manuals tab, and that allows you to search through the manual. You can have multiple manuals. So for example, the fire department may have one for a driving manual, an incident management manual, all of those different levels of things that we need. They can come in and drill down as deep into the policy or the manual as they need to. They can also print or copy it as an entire PDF. So if somebody needed one, for example, our probationary employees could download an entire one so that they have the whole resource there for study as they're going through their probationary period. But there's always the electronic version to come back to that is complete and up to date, so never have to worry about that. The old binder style we used to have going out of date and becoming obsolete. The other thing that they have is the ability to put in tips. So if you go across to the top, there's a today's tips. And these can be training or other informational aspects that we can record and implement. If you want, we can listen to 3 minutes of Gordon Graham if you think there's a value to that. But he does talk about a little bit about the value that he perceives in this solution for fire departments nationwide. So again, it gives us a comprehensive platform for maintaining all of those pieces. And if you go back to our accreditation process, and very specifically our strategic plan, we identified our number one goal was internal communication with our stakeholders and being able to provide this information to our crews and our members. And there were two very specific issues when we had our deferral notice that must be resolved before we can move forward with the accreditation process. This solution takes care of those, and it touches literally every one of our core competencies and our core missions in the accreditation continuing improvement process. So it hits all of those markers for us. One last thing specific to the fire side, again, this is not township-wide, is it is single sign-on. So for members who are on the fire department, once they log in, they can access the Fire Training Academy, which is actually a product that we currently use with Flexipulse. We're currently a customer. We use that module right now. And again, if we go for both the township and the fire department, the single sign-in from there, they can log or move directly over to the local government side as well. So it reduces some of the burden of having multiple places the crews have to go to get the information about the management of the township and the fire departments. One button click and then just following the links through that platform.
Sure.
Did I miss anything?
I think you covered all the fire
Okay.
side.
Before you move on to the next side,
Yes.
then, so if you have a person that's supposed to do these things, does it come up to their division chief then? If they haven't done it, you get a signal, or what happens if you've told them they have to do this by so-and-so a date? Do you receive it, or the division chief gets a highlight that says so-and-so haven't completed these tasks?
That's part of the reporting process, that's correct. So I don't know if it'll proactively flag, but we can go in and we'll set up, obviously, the managers, probably down to the captain level, the shift commander level, and they'll have the ability to go in and access and see who is trained, who has completed the different acknowledgements, who's completed the different daily trainings, I wish that's one thing they don't have in their demo side is the ability to go in and look at those reports. But yes, you can go in and see who is delinquent on those different things so that, let's say we make it a quarterly task, go in and make sure, okay, is everybody caught up for the quarter? If not, we can find the folks who aren't caught up and then work with them to get caught up.
So that would be my concern, is that everyone is diligent on making sure that people are tuned to that. If a quarter goes by and somebody is not checking to see if those tasks are done, then this becomes worthless.
That's correct. So that is.
And what is and then my next question, my next question would be, and if they fail to do that, what's the penalty?
So.
And that'll be township-wide. You know, what's the penalty if you don't do it? And you say, I'm not doing it. I mean, you don't have to answer me, but I'm just saying, what's the consequence?
Yeah, so that would lead to progressive discipline. So that's on the fire side, we have probably half a dozen, probably more than that, training tracks that we actively manage. So fire certification, EMS certification, driver certification, hazardous materials, ACLS, BTLS. So we have this whole.
Okay, I mean,
and
that's,
so
you know.
so we're just gonna add this to that list to make sure that they're keeping up on those trainings. So our supervisors are already actively engaged in monitoring our staff training.
And then same would go on the township side.
Yes.
Do we have that in our policy, that they will have to, or we have to change some policies to show that if they don't keep track, or they don't maintain this process that we're spending this much money for, that there is a consequence?
I think there is policy existing that would allow us to use progressive discipline if a supervisor directs someone to do this training and they don't do it. It would be insubordination, which is already covered. We could amend the discipline policy to add specifically failing to complete assigned trainings. We'd have to think about what the time limits would be, but we could amend, though there is existing policy that would cover it as well.
Or how about our boards? When they don't sign off on documents that we give them that are,
They're not employees.
they're not employees, but
Point is.
we've had some suggestions on policies that we've asked them to sign off on that they haven't.
So one way, so in private sector, what I've had happen in the past is, so we have an employee handbook, so in the handbook, essentially, you have to say, when does this become effective? And so no different than a policy. And so you can put language, and this was, at the time, a Coolidge attorney who is now a Taft HR attorney, gave this guidance that embed language in your policy that essentially says that, or in your master employee handbook, however you call it, so that the policy becomes effective when it's posted to a system of this nature, not when an employee acknowledges receipt. Because you always have 1 out of 100 or 10 out of 100 that say, I'm not signing anything because I don't trust my employer. So having it become automatically in effect, whether it's acknowledged or not, is critical. The second thing is that, and this is what you can do proactively in the future, is that you can make signing the policy in place at the time of hire a condition of employment. And so that in their employment offer, one of those conditions is signing the employee acknowledgement of the employee handbook and continuing to acknowledge in whatever means, electronic or written, in the future, any changes or amendments that are adopted to that policy. That helps you with everything going forward. It doesn't help with the 100 employees you have. So that's where you have to have kind of that two-pronged approach. So it's just something, guidance that I was given, that I paid for, that you get for free.
Thank you. I would note, I guess, and I think we would have the ability to choose our effective date, because in the event of policies that affect township-wide, examples being recently the sports and fitness policies, we do have to give the union under the contract, I think, 10 days notice of any
That-
policy.
For fire department policies, yes, but not for township
Not for
policies.
township, okay.
That's correct.
And then the only
My
other
mistake.
thing to keep in mind, obviously, is as you make updates to this, you are updating, obviously, the public record, from a public records, inquiry or request. And then, from a cross-reference standpoint, to make sure that this ties directly with resolutions as they're passed. So that I don't know how you're gonna cross-reference that. You have a very organized system here. And yet sometimes we have to go look for a resolution from 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. So to make sure that you have some way to cross-reference that, so I don't know if there's a resolution management module that.
Yeah, I specifically asked that, particularly, for example, today, we have a township policy that was adopted by the board that's not in the handbook, or conflicting numbers. So that's one of the problems we're trying to solve with this solution.
Yeah.
Problem number two is I asked Ms. Sink if this solution can also do, not specifically in terms of the intent, but could it do a quasi-codification? So, for example, municipalities in the state of Ohio have to retain a codified code of ordinances because those are actually law and those are enforceable by their, peace officers and courts. So I believe the answer to that question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Singh, but you got back that yes, it can do that to a certain degree.
Yes. So, if you would, Mr. Rushing, could you go back to the home? And then,
This is a demo, so it's not going to be fully
right, I wanted to
Scalable.
show you, actually, I guess, go to manuals again, I apologize. And if you see the fire policy manual, the PDF to the right there, if you download that, and so you'll see it's indexed down the left side, and basically just like it would look, maybe like Beavercreek City's ordinance code would look in American Legal Publishing. It looks the same way here, and you can link to those different sections from the table of contents, which you can do on the platform as well. So from the township side of things, I think it will give us an opportunity potentially. It wasn't the initial problem we were trying to solve. The handbook was the initial problem we were trying to solve. But it could also be a repository for our resolutions, to have them easily and ready available when there are public records requests, when we
Yeah.
need to look back historically.
Good.
And as to the township side of things as well, one of the things that I think is very important about this is risk mitigation. Lexipol will alert us when a law has changed, and we need to make a policy adjustment, and they'll make a recommendation of how to adjust that policy. So a good example would be the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act that was enacted last year. We would have gotten a flag through Lexipol that changed, and they would have suggested revisions to either our FMLA policy or an adoption of a new policy. And I think that's like invaluable. It would give me a lot of peace of mind as well, because it's difficult to, OTA and VHRA. There are several different places I could get that information, but I'd have to actively hunt for it. Whereas through Lexipol, they're giving that to us, or at least alerting us that a change may be prudent.
And in that regard, it's more like a filter. We are already signed up for bulletins through all the professional associations that we belong to. We get bulletins from all of the different legal councils that we subscribe to. But this is yet another bulletin, another alert that we will receive. And the idea is that if we are continuously looking for these things, receiving them, then it'd be even more difficult to have something slip through, as it were, in terms of case law. Case law is one of the more challenging aspects because one specifically has to look and follow the various district courts, Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, federal judiciary versus statutorial. OTA does do a very good job, but from Taft through Surdick, Dowden, Turner, through other Frost, Braun, Todd, all these different ones that we have worked with, they give us these bulletins as well.
Okay. So the initial outlay essentially is $38,026.80, and then you have a recurring annual software maintenance agreement of some sort for roughly $18,000 and change. And then how long is that price guaranteed for, the recurring cost? Is it a 1 year? Is it a 5 year? Is it a 3 years? Is it a 1 week?
Oh, I don't recall.
I believe it's 2 years. So
Okay.
the initial outlay in 2025 of the 38,000 includes that annual rate for the first year.
Okay.
And then the second year would be
The 13 plus the 4.
18,000-ish,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. So one of the things we asked in the past, and you weren't here when we did that, but, was that we try to negotiate longer price locks, for as long as we can, or at least a not to exceed, 5% increase or something like that. So that from a budgeting standpoint, we can look out 5 years, especially in case in a fire, or something else where we got a 10-year budget, that we're working with, that we can project that. So that would be the only thing that I would ask for, is that, similar to what we've done in the past, is try to get a 3 or a 5 year lock, or on what it could increase, or what that software maintenance agreement would look like. Just so we know.
I just pulled up the agreement just to double check myself.
Sure.
And
And it goes for any recurring maintenance agreement we sign, whether it's on a plow truck or on a generator or on software. The only reason I brought up the resolution thing is I know sometimes it's working forward, it's easy. Working backwards or trying to pull something or find
You're exactly
something.
right.
And if you had the ability, like in this case, to click on a policy and say, this ties to this resolution, it would at least help you.
Right.
And we're getting a discount also because of Otama?
A good question. It's not a discount specifically, but they do have $3,000 worth of grants that Otarma has granted for Lexipol products in the past. 1,000 for the general government one, and then 2,000 for fire and EMS. And so if we do implement this, we'll obviously be applying for those grants and have a pretty good expectation of receiving them.
Those are recurring or one time?
That I don't know. If they're recurring,
They're recurring.
So
You can't apply for them each year.
Each year
Not to
they're
say
available.
that you can
Obviously,
receive them.
there's no guarantee
but-
they'll offer it every year.
Correct.
but if it's
And
available, you can
I believe last year, our retirement representative stated that they increased that grant, from a 2,000 to 1,000 amount. So it does vary each year, but they are available each year.
Okay.
and it just, the other part of that is it speaks to the value that Otarma sees in it as a risk mitigation tool to
Okay.
miss things.
Yeah, I have no issue with it. Sounds great, other than because I would just ask that, try to go back and get some lock, because if it goes up to 50,000 a year, it might not be worth it.
Sure.
You could hire a
Right.
person to do just that.
And the other thing I would like to note as well is the willingness to get us started now for free for the rest of this year, and then we wouldn't be billed until January.
What's the integration timeline?
As fast as we can move, essentially. The cost that we have here includes assistance with integrating the they have 5 tiers of integration. We're asking for support with 2, which is the high risk and the high liability level policies. Beyond that, it's as fast as we want to go. So we can continue to pay for tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, or excuse, I guess 3, 4, and 5. Or we can use the 1 and 2 to train our folks to then be able to do it ourselves, which is what our intent is. So for the fire department, I expect it to be relatively quick because we don't have that many policies on the fire side. Obviously, the township will be more challenging because the handbook is pretty substantial. So that'll take a little bit more work to get in. And we have a few more folks that we can throw at it, so we can cheat that way.
Yes.
Okay.
Can we get an intern to help her put those in?
I'm sure we could solicit one.
I mean, I think Wright State is looking for people to place interns with, or Sochi.
Yeah, we could look into it.
That might be helpful for you.
Yeah, one of the items they do is they essentially have a model handbook, but we already have established standing operating guidelines. We have established township policy. So we need to implement specifically the things the board has authorized. Anything in deviation of that would have to be a board approval based off current policy. So it will take a little bit of due care just to ensure that we're not adopting any boilerplate model policies. You know, we're trying to upload and adopt what the board has given us the ability to adopt.
Okay.
And my understanding of that process is our handbook versus their model, and they sort of overlay as if it were a tracked document. And so we can accept or reject any revision they suggest. And as, if I understood correctly, you all will have the ability to sign off on any revisions electronically rather than having to.
Sure. I think we still have to vote.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
still have to vote.
And that's a module similar like
Yeah.
VIP. We delegate that to certain individuals, so.
Yep.
Not to say that you'll be responsible looking at it every day, but you're more than
Thank
welcome
you.
to.
Right. But we still have to vote in public.
Absolutely.
So-
And trustee Crutch's, to your point, once more, one of the challenges with township resolutions is just that they are standalone policies. There's no indication other than the motion number. Unlike, cities, they actually have codes. So section this, it's much more truly like law because in fact it is law. Township policy is just that, the official statement of the Board of Township Trustees.
Yeah, I've always thought we should actually start every resolution with notwithstanding anything to the contrary,
Well, that would be smart.
because arguably,
You're correct, because theoretically, every resolution going back since, 1803 is still in effect.
okay. So do you think you could come back to the board at least, we could, if we move forward with this evening, by budget hearings, that we could have an idea of what the next, if they could give us a more extended lock on, so.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They've been exceptionally willing to
I
work
can't
with
believe we're
us.
the first in the country to ask, but if we are, then everyone else will appreciate it. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
One final comment. Ms. Frick has had an opportunity to review it and has approved it, so that final clause on the motion is not necessary. Or you can read it in and it's already been
It's still,
accomplished.
yeah,
whichever
we
your
just read it in,
preference.
yeah. Okay.
I move to make a motion 2024, moving it around, 20241028-fire-A to approve purchase request number 24-fire-03482 Lexapro for the Fire Policy Manual and Local Government Administration Policy Manual in the amount of $38,026.80, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board upon receipt of approval by legal counsel.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
And the added item, board, is as you know, we had a guest last meeting from the Beavercreek Soccer Association. We do have a little bit more, bring some color to the context of the request. So I'll turn it over to Chief Vandenboss, who can describe the request a little bit more in detail.
Yes, I apologize for missing this for the packet. We did go back and review after the request was made at the last meeting and got a little additional information. The BSA had reached out to us to ask what the cost would be, so that part was congruent. We had not sent them an invoice or any other charge. We did send them a quote or an estimate based off the policy, because what they were asking for was to provide a medic unit guaranteed there, which we would have to do with overtime. We had, in years past, been able to do it without overtime because there were no other events scheduled, and so we were able to put a medic down there. They were last out, and they just never had to leave for another call. This year, we had already been committed with a number of other Fire Prevention Week and public education activities, so we weren't able to station an on-duty crew there, which was the need for the quote. So the request came in to waive the fee, and that is in alignment with the policy. The board has in the past waived fees for the event. I don't believe they've waived a medic fee, but obviously they've waived tent fees and other things in the past. And so what we're asking is, based off of their request and past practice in accordance with our policy, that we waive the $2,027.55 of overtime to provide a dedicated unit for that event. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I had none. I make a motion to adopt 20241028-fire-B. Approve the request by the Beavercreek Soccer Association to waive overtime fees in the amount of $2,027.55 for providing a medic at the Haunted Classic Soccer Tournament at Ankeny Field in accordance with Fire Department Standards Operating Guidelines.
Second.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes. Do we need to reference the guideline number? 5,000.003.
There you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. And I will be reaching out to staff there and ask them to come maybe one meeting earlier next year so we can avoid kind of the last minute rush. But it was a request made in good faith, and we felt that it was appropriate to honor it, and we appreciate the board supporting that.
Yeah, if they have a new person that's handling those types of things and, you know, the tent requests, all those different things, if they can.
Yeah, obviously,
Just give
Mr.
them a heads
Ankeny
up.
handled it for so many years.
Yeah,
The
and
folks
then I can't
ramped
remember
up
the
to-
other guy that came in, white hair. He came in year after year. Great guy.
Yeah, I don't
That's
recall
the other,
either.
that's the other tournament. So they do.
Oh,
Oh, that's the,
That's for the tents.
Yeah,
We
that
waive the
comes
tent
in,
fees.
yeah.
That's the Creek Classic or what that was.
Yeah, that's a separate.
Do you have something?
yes, I did. I just wanted to shout out to Lieutenant Ferguson. He was present on Station 61 for the Beavercreek Women's League tour that they had on Saturday morning that I was present with. And he did a great job answering a lot of questions. I kicked in on a couple answers, and they made lunch for the ladies, the crew that was there, and they were all happy, and then they took a tour. And they were asking a lot of questions, and I finally had to cut it down because I was like, these guys are out working, and they have jobs to do and things to do. And I said, okay, I think we've been here long enough, and I think that they need to get back to work. And I think they were kind of, but Lieutenant Ferguson and his group were very cordial and toured the ladies around the engines. And a lot of the people there were just not aware of all that we do and the engines and everything. They weren't aware of the auxiliary or a CERT program. So I suggested to the president that maybe the auxiliary do a presentation at Beavercreek Women's League at some point and educate people. And they were just amazed at all the things that the fire department does and what scheduling they wanted to do. They recommended to do 8-hour shifts, and I was like, well, that's not gonna happen. And we talked about the cost and everything, and so it was very educational, I believe, and they'll be reporting it at the next meeting next week about how they loved it. But Lieutenant Ferguson and his staff did a great job.
Well, thank you for letting me know. I'll be sure to pass that along to
They
him.
were very patient and kind.
Chris is great people,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that.
He was my wrangler back in that day, so.
Great.
And when I made him lift the jaws of life. And they were like, whoa, this is heavy. And I said, yeah, this is just one of the things that the guys and girls have to lift to operate in the fire department. So it brought a whole new awareness to people. So it was good thing to happen.
Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
No problem.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. In the meantime, I want to thank Ms. Sink for assisting. We do have now the updated resolution for the adult use cannabis. If it's the board's pleasure, we can revisit that now.
And Ryan, or Mr. Rushing, I was reading the header paragraph on this, and so is Ms. Frick still online with us?
Yes, I
Okay.
am.
All right, and I don't know if you can see this, Dawn, or if you're still driving. So this essentially has been modified to say that we allow or permit one adult use cultivator, one adult use processor, and prohibit adult use cannabis dispensary. And so is there such a thing still as a medical dispensary, or are all medical now adult use? Because if we pass this, can someone come in and request and file an application for a medical dispensary?
No, they can't, because that's, I actually reached out
Okay,
to the division, and they're not, first of all, they're not even issuing those licenses anymore, but
Okay.
they're all just as one now.
okay, thank you.
And Board, I did find that, you did pass, the Board of Township Trustees, passed on June 12th of 2017, one cultivator and one processor in the farm agricultural.
Okay,
And,
A1 essentially.
correct.
Yep, okay.
So yes, it was A1 Ag District. And then you passed later, or the Board of Township Trustees passed later that year, any retail dispensary distribution of medical marijuana. was to be prohibited in Beavercreek Township.
Okay.
Right, and that's how the zoning resolution reads now. I mean, it says shall be limited to not more than one cultivating and processing facility.
Okay.
Is how it reads.
Do we need to add the retail dispensary or a retail adult use dispensary, or just leave it as adult use cannabis dispensaries, plural?
You can use it, just leave it as adult use cannabis dispensaries, because
Okay.
that's technically the language of the statute.
Perfect. Okay.
Board, I'll recommend reading the title of the resolution as presented in front of you and as discussed.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 10231028-CDR-A, a resolution to allow one adult use cultivator and one adult use processor within the agricultural A1 zoning district, and to prohibit adult use cannabis dispensaries within the unincorporated area of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, Ohio, as presented.
Second.
Discussion, and to clarify, it's an adult use cannabis cultivator and an adult use cannabis processor.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? No?
Call for vote.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
No.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Okay. Ms. Frick, anything to add?
No, nothing further right now.
And Mr. Zaharieff?
Yeah, just one item. Last week I attended on behalf of Beavercreek Township, the Center for Public Investment Management. Well, some of this is required and some of it is for continuing education for the RRC section for fiscal officers. I did attend the Treasury Truths and Marketing Myths. Big thing under the flagging fraud is some of the new attempts on the phishing emails. They're now called spear phishing, which I'm getting a nod from our IT folks out there. And what they're doing is public records requests for vendors, PO numbers, requisitions, and then targeting based on what the Board of Township Trustees approved. So something to be aware of. Big discussion with the State Auditor's Office is policies. Mr. Rushing, myself, and Mrs. Molden are working on financial policies to put in place. The auditors made it very clear if these policies are not in place and something happens in regards to a phishing email and or ransomware, finding their recoveries will be placed on the township. The other class, very interesting, was public financing and accounting practices, just an economic development update, and our very own from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the head of AI for the United States Air Force, took a very interesting of how AI is going to help not only in the finance world, but just in the government world. And so it was very interesting there, and I'll share, they will be presenting all the slides. I'll share that with Mr. Rushing so it gets out to all the appropriate staff. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. MVRPC?
Well, there's a lot. Next, November 7th, the age-friendly network resolution was passed at the ISC meeting last Friday. And it will go in front of the full board of MVRPC. At that point, it probably will pass, and the Beavercreek Township would receive then $20,000, along with the city of Beavercreek receiving $20,000 to do a survey of any questions that the Beavercreek Township would like to ask to the citizens, and this is privately funded, so there's no limit on what kind of question the township could ask citizens. So hopefully we will coordinate with the city of Beavercreek
Absolutely.
and work together with a $40,000 survey to ask things about the fire department and our township residents. And so I would hope that Mr. Rushing would lead that charge, and I'd like the trustees to think of questions that, you'd like to ask them about the township. So that's gonna be a good project for 2025. I attended for MVRPC, the NAACP dinner, awards dinner Friday night, and also have to go to a Montgomery County Township Association dinner in 2 weeks to support Mr. Martin, who is going to be the keynote speaker. Also for MVRPC, 3 major things are coming out. Mr. Rushing, I believe, is going to sign up for the emissions information about greenhouse gas. It's a free, their MVRPC staff will be working with Mr. Rushing on finding out information about emissions with the township. And with that, there's $740 billion money sitting on the table from the federal government. Once we decide what kind of emissions information we want, such as streetlights, any kind of gas-producing information, especially through the Public Service Department, they could provide monies for us to purchase it with no matching dollars. So that's going to be a good opportunity. Everybody who's interested has had their information in by October 31st. Second, they're asking a reminder of, this is something new, about elective pay. Information session coming up on November 14th, a new process that allows governments and nonprofits to get access to the same clean energy tax credits that have only been available to taxable entities. And they are saying that there's to be interested, RSVP for a seminar. And we have that, Mr. Rushing has that information for the seminar. They also are encouraging us to share a link for a survey for our residents for Ohio Air Quality Development Authority. Received a $156 million federal grant to expand use of renewable energy in single-family homes and multi-family buildings as part of the preparation for rolling out the Solar Ohio program, and has created a residential solar survey. Homeowners interested in participating in the single-family residential solar program are encouraged to complete a homeowner survey. This is not a formal application, but will help capture valuable data to inform future program efforts. And they're asking developers or owners of multifamily properties can share valuable details and tell us about your project survey. And that you would need to contact Matt Lindsay at MVRPC. So that's my take on MVRPC this week.
TAC? Any update?
I didn't go to that meeting, Mr. Earhart, he probably has a report.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be in the next
That's fine.
agenda.
We'll wait. Opioid Regional Task Force?
We have a meeting tomorrow at 2:30.
Okay. Greene County Regional Planning, so we had full commission meeting, and the topics on there, ironically, was Bath Township was proposing changes to their zoning text related to cannabis and recreational or adult use, whatever we call it. The Beavercreek Township piece of it was the Russ Research Park PUD, which had essentially moved from the zoning commission to regional planning. And that morphed into a 1-hour discussion, roughly on on their uses that they had requested, the background of why they requested the uses. They essentially just put together a wish list. They acknowledged that. Their attorney was willing to exclude some retail uses. I provided history on on that project, at least since 2014, since I've been here. The storyline that it was intended to be, repeated the storyline that it was intended to be a research and development campus, essentially that OU was going to make it a STEM campus at one time. And then they came to us before this board. I don't remember, Ms. Wallace, if you were on here or not, but when they came, I think you were, when they came to us and wanted to rezone the corner piece that is now owned by Ober Development into retail. And I gave the rationale behind what we permitted and what we excluded. And they were essentially looking at one point to add a lot of those retail, what I deem in the other life I lead, service retail uses into across the front of the campus, ultimately. Anywhere from daycares to massage to coffee shops to retail, restaurant, personal services. And so just explain that wasn't what the OU had requested, that OU was very specific in many of their presentations. I reiterated that, I asked if their attorney, and not because the township, it was very clear the township doesn't have any say or purview when it comes to a deed restriction on a property, but that it was my recollection. And OU gave several presentations, both to the trustees and at Greene County Township Association picnics that they held out there, that campus was always intended to be research and development. In fact, they said they were required to keep it that way. And so now they were looking to add all kinds of other uses. So it morphed into the Regional Planning Commission wanting to table it and recommend denial to the Zoning Commission based on a possibility of a deed restriction nobody can find. And I kept reiterating that's not the purpose of the discussion. It's just so that as they go through this process, they don't get hit with some family member coming back saying, hey, you built something you can't build, and then they've wasted a bunch of money. So it was more education than policy. So we got through all of that, and then they finally agreed that they would, if the commission would recommend approval, with striking the retail, and I had recommended retail and automotive uses. I ultimately didn't vote on the matter because I can't, but I just gave some guidance as far as language evolution. And so ultimately the zoning commission recommended to the regional planning made the recommendation to our zoning commission to approve, but with the understanding that they would maintain the character and the design of a research and development park and exclude all retail and automotive uses. Their attorney argued a little bit that, they have a company that wants to do automotive wraps. So they want to put the skin on a van or skin on a car or skin on a truck, and that wasn't automotive. And I said, in my world, it is automotive because you have cars parked out there and this and that. So ultimately, that's the recommendation that went to the zoning commission. The applicant expressed serious concerns about going back before the zoning commission because the temperature in the room when they were there is that they were going to be tied to residential development that while it's neighboring, there is no connectivity. There's no plans for connectivity by either the residential developer or Russ. And so they're very concerned about when they go back, obviously if they went with a recommendation for denial because the executive committee tied, because I recused myself. Mr. Kugler was very adamant against any retail uses. He wanted it to stay Research Park. That was the Russ intent, is what he felt. So that's the story on that one. So it'll be heading back to zoning commission and be interesting to see where it goes.
It will.
Okay. Health Department.
Next meeting is November the 7th, first Thursday of the month. And so I will have a report after that.
Great. School superintendent, city manager.
Meeting on Wednesday, tomorrow.
Okay.
So, 2 days from now.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Restoration Advisory.
No meeting.
Water Wastewater Committee.
No meeting.
Township Association.
There will be a meeting on November 12th. It'll be held at the Greene County Library, and Green Giving will be the host at 6:30 at the Xenia Community Library, 76 East Market Street, and they are definitely asking for RSVP. The coffee hub will be the caterer.
Investment Oversight Committee.
Nothing on the board.
Okay. And then Greene County 911 Advisory, we have a meeting coming up. Trying to remember when that is.
I believe that's Wednesday as well.
I was gonna say it's this week. It's either Wednesday or Thursday. Okay. If anything else to come before the board, if not, do we have a motion to go into executive session under Ohio Revised Code, section 121.22G2, to consider the sale or disposition of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use property in accordance with section 505.10 of the revised code?
So moved?
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes. Thank you.
I knew that. Yeah.
I make a motion to return to our regular scheduled meeting
Second?
In the executive session.
and end executive session.
Second.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Thank you, board. That's all we have this evening.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes. Thank you.